Sterling College. You guys can do much better than that. Good morning, Sterling College. Good morning. That was much better. I want to welcome the students, those returning to us and those new to us this year. The 30th annual Keynote Convocation of Sterling College. It's a time really when we celebrate tradition. It's a time when we gather corporately and formally to really set the tone for this academic year. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and my privilege to introduce my friend and my colleague, Dr. Greg Kerr.
So this is the Keynote Convocation. We're here to set the academic tone for this year. And this is a significant year in the life of the college. 125th anniversary. 1887 this college got started. And so we're going to take a moment to look back at Sterling College's history to kind of set that tone. We're going to do this because Sterling College has a place in history. A place in history because of the people that have been here and because of the people that are here. Now, like Thomas Jefferson, I can say that I like the dreams of the future better than the history of the past. I like the dreams of the future better than the history of the past because I'm not really a history buff. You heard I have a degree in biology. It's actually been a long time since I took a history course. I never took one in college. The last time I took a history course, I had an afro and bell bottoms. And I'm much more comfortable talking about biology. And did you want a random? Yeah, I didn't know he was going to say anything about random facts because I'd rather talk about the reproductive cycle of mosses because it's really fascinating, the things that happen there. Can I have the slide, please? Imagine walking through a forest. There's somewhere, not in Kansas. But how do you tell a male moss from a female moss? This is something every college student needs to know. Just a little hint. If there's a sporangium coming out the top, that little hook, it's the female. So now you've all been educated in biology, and it's your random fact, and if you win money on Jeopardy because of that, I get a cut. So even though I'm more comfortable with biology than history, we're going to look at SC's history for our direction. Let's take this building, for example, Spencer Hall. It's named after the first president of Sterling College. And this was the second building built here on campus. And at its dedication, Professor Wilson said, "This building is to be set apart for service. Service to the community, a gathering place for thoughtful discussion of the problems of community, state, and nation. A center from which shall radiate to the community the truth that shall set men free above all. Not only mental and moral truth, but spiritual truth. Because the dedication of this building is not to the service of the community alone, but to the service of the Divine Master." So this building has a place in history, a place in SC history where we can talk about truth, where we're going to radiate truth to the community. And that truth that sets men free, the truth that set me free, is truth with a capital T. It's a truth you can know. It's a truth with a name, and that name's Jesus. And so, as we look at the history of Sterling College, we're going to get our direction for today. So, a place in history is not just a physical location from like this building. We can talk to our history professors. History professors, where are you? They can tell us where things like the Declaration of Independence was signed, a physical location. Like this document here. Where was the Declaration of Independence signed, gentlemen? This is a quiz. Where was that? Independence Hall? No, they're wrong. I can got evidence here. It was signed at the bottom. And so, hopefully they'll cover that in history class just after Middle Earth. But the physical location, even of where this document was signed, isn't important. It was the people associated with it. It was their courage, their resolve, and for some, the Christian faith that led those signers to have a place in history. Sterling College is a place in history, likewise, not because of the physical location, but because of the people. It was who they were that led to what they did that made them that place in history. It was their character, it was their faith in Christ that mattered, that made that place. Near the end of his life, Sterling's third president, Hugh Kelsey, which is Kelsey Hall, is named after where I have my office, he looked back at his time at Sterling College and he recalled a place in history held by several faculty members. He recalled them more for their character than what they did. Their names are familiar to those of us who've walked around campus. Kelsey praised Professor Wilson as, quote, one of God's noblemen, humble to a fault and far too generous for his own good, but a great scholar and teacher of ancient languages unexcelled. His students affectionately called him Bonus. I have no idea why. Which faculty member here would you call Bonus? Anybody have an idea? No guesses?
Dr. Hank!
Dr. Hank is Bonus. You've been duly dubbed Bonus, Dr. Hank. President Kelsey went on to say that Professor Talman Bell was another Sterling stalwart. And one must mention Miss D. Ruth Thompson, head of the chemistry department, having made for herself a most enviable place in the affection of all Sterling people. But here's where it gets back to Christ and character, because President Kelsey went on to say that it has never been my privilege to work with three more wonderful people. Their real greatness lay in their staunch, upright characters and their fine Christian personalities. And they were not alone on Sterling's campus. He goes on to say that among the faculty and staff there were a score more like them, and that this was transformational to the college. He said, quote, the kindly response to every proposed plan and the uncomplaining self-sacrifice, the earnest, believing prayer life of my colleagues were a constant comfort and inspiration to me. They were people that Hugh Kelsey would never say they were just somebody that he used to know. Let me explain to faculty from a different generation here that I made a reference to popular culture there. And a shameless attempt to engage students. Okay, thank you. But there is a point to that. You see, these were people of character, people of Christ, that were unforgettable to President Kelsey. You could never say they were somebody that he just used to know. And students, it wasn't just faculty and staff that made an impression, that made a place in Dr. Kelsey's heart. Here's what he wrote about students. We were all very happy with our student group. They had a seriousness of purpose and a fiber of character that grows into the highest type of men and women. As I worked with them, I was convinced that all our efforts in rather untoward circumstances were being well repaid. Again, it was their character that made a difference. You student athletes know we want you to be champions of character. This is deeply rooted at Sterling College. It's not just an NAIA invention. The first gymnasium on campus is right next door, Wilson Hall. And at its dedication, Professor Wilson, who it was named after, I guess he wasn't dead yet, he was there and he talked. And here's what he said about that dedication of the first gymnasium. Education is needed by everyone, not only intellectually and spiritually, but also physically. The body is the dwelling place of the Holy Spirit, not to be defiled, but to be adorned and beautiful and strengthened. And he goes on to say, this building that we enter tonight, let's talk about the first gymnasium, will not fulfill its mission if it is used only for the development of winning teams for Sterling College, whether in football, basketball, or any other field of athletic endeavor. So you see, even from the earliest days, our athletic program was centered on Christ and on character. So as we look at Sterling College's place in history, it would do well to recall what the same Professor Wilson said at the 30th anniversary of Sterling College. This is 1917. The college has only been here 30 years. World War I was going on. He said this: "There are two things which we would not change, but would rather trust that they would abide with the institution through the years to come, no matter what increase or change may come. The first is the purpose for which Sterling College was founded and has been maintained. By the charter granted by the state of Kansas, it is to be, quote, an institution of learning in which may be obtained an education enlightened by the precepts of the Bible and by the life of Jesus Christ. We would not change that purpose through the years any more than we would change the sun that has given life to this old planet. We would remain always for Christ and for the church, because always for the book of books as a textbook." So this is what he said at the 30th anniversary, that the first thing that they would not change would be the college's commitment to Christ. And the second thing he said was this: the second thing we would not change, in the history of some other colleges, as they've grown in numbers and in material wealth, there's been a tendency to the development of selfishness and social class distinctions. The department's working especially for its own upbringing rather than for the school as a whole. The students placing more stress on electronic devices. Actually, this is 1917, he didn't say that. He said more stress on dress and expensive social functions. He said it's the glory of an institution such as ours that in its early years there's been a spirit of cooperation, of self-sacrifice on the part of many, and unselfish work for the common good. And we wouldn't wish this spirit of cooperation, of unselfishness, to be changed by any increase. So the Christian faith, the character traits of selflessness and cooperation, self-sacrifice, that sense of community that we want on campus, it's something that the Strategic Planning Committee, a group of faculty, staff, students, trustees, community members, identified last fall as two things that we didn't want to change. And here, 1917, they were saying the same thing. Wilson went on in 1917 to talk about what the future might look like for Sterling College, what they might wish for. Let's see if it doesn't still hold true today. It's kind of the same things that faculty and staff often say about our hopes and dreams for the college. Here's what he said: "What good do we as a faculty now wish for Cooper College?" This is back when Sterling College was called Cooper College. "We would wish for increased endowment, more buildings, larger equipment, a larger faculty, a greater number of students, a higher standard of scholarship, a better service to the community and to the church, a fuller measure of the blessings of God upon the work of our hands, taking our weakness and making it strong by the power of His might, intellectual growth, moral character, and spiritual life." And here's what he said the faculty wished for the students of that day: "As a student goes out to take his part in the busy world, our thought for him is that he is to be a center and a source of good." And he concludes by referring to a book that was written by the Apostle John. And a quote from that he said is, I have no greater joy than this, that my children walk in truth." He says, "As members of the teaching force of Cooper College, we can have no greater joy in future days than the pleasure which will come from seeing our children walk in truth." And so please do not be offended, students, that he was referring to you as the children of the faculty. That is just simply a way of showing that endearment that the faculty have for the students in that day, and that I think still abides, still continues to this day. So let's bring this up to today. Let's bring it all up to today. What about this new, fresh academic year? As Christian mentioned on Wednesday, our verse for the year as a campus is from 1 Corinthians. It says, "Keep alert, stand firm in your faith, be courageous, be strong. Let all that you do be done in love." Let this verse as we see it on campus this year, be a reminder to each one to be a person of character, a person of Christ. Because that's marked Sterling College's place in history and can do so for each one here. To the faculty, staff, and trustees, I leave you with a reminder from the first president, Francis Schaeffer. He says, "The work of Christian education is unsurpassed. It begins in time and goes on through eternity." So, let's not forget to be a person of character, a person of Christ, who has a place in history. I hope this is a great year for each one of us here. Thanks for listening.